Hello and welcome to the viewers of this video. This is the Orange Fan here, bringing you another entry for the episode Recap and Thoughts category. This video will be dedicated to episode 32 of Young Justice, Bloodlines. We begin this episode in an unspecified location. There's no timestamp, but we do see that it's a dark and dreary location. A bald man talks to a boy to see if a machine of some kind is ready to head off somewhere. And we also find out that whatever this machine is, there's only room for one person to go wherever it is that the boy plans to go to. We then cut to Mount Justice on February 28th, where Beast Boy and Robin go to see Nightwing just after he's finished translating the Krolataean intel that was on the data disk that Miss Martian and Martian Manhunter retrieved from the episode Alienated. According to the translated data disk, they find out that the Krolataeans were capturing humans because there was something within humans that they wanted to use for their own purposes. There's no exact translation for it, but according to Nightwing, the closest translation is metagene. Before they can ponder what a metagene is exactly, the computer of the cave warns them of an unknown energy impulse. And suddenly, the machine that we saw in the opening scene arrives out of what seems to be thin air, and emerging from the machine is the boy that we saw in the opening scene of the episode, except now he's wearing a costume and some goggles. After Beast Boy comments that they now know the identity of the unknown energy impulse, the boy actually takes quite a liking to the sound of impulse and decides to adopt it as his codename. And we quickly see that super speed is his special ability. He also talks really fast. And Impulse questions about Blue Beetle, but says he'll figure that out for himself as he goes around the cave. Robin and Beast Boy try to chase after Impulse, but he's too fast for them. But Impulse ends up getting knocked out by Nightwing when he's caught off guard. We then cut to Tibet, where we see Red Arrow, who's back in better shape compared to how we last saw him in Salvage. And yeah, Red Arrow is with Cheshire, and this is the building that they're about to enter. This is where Cheshire's lead on Speedy's location led her to. And Red Arrow still questions how she found Speedy's location when the heroes couldn't for several years. And Cheshire responds that she's willing to go places that the heroes are unwilling to go to. And she also reaffirms that she's hoping that finding Speedy will help Red Arrow get over his real Roy Harper guilt, as she puts it, so he can be the father that their daughter Leanne needs. And we see that Cheshire ended up bringing their daughter with them for this particular mission. And we do get a few scenes here or there that show their progress with this mission. And there's a joke at one point where Red Arrow comments that Cheshire should have left their daughter in the care of Artemis for this mission. But back to the main plot. Robin and Beast Boy are watching Impulse while he's handcuffed both his hands and his feet. So yeah, he's handcuffed both in the hands and feet so he can't escape. And they're watching him while Nightwing is getting something. And Impulse tries to assure them that they're on the same side and that he is who he claims to be. More specifically, he tells them that his real name is Bart Allen, and he's apparently the grandson of Barry Allen, the current Flash. But he says that they can call him Bart Allen or Impulse or other variations of those names. And we also, or that's right, Nightwing returns with a glass of water and he offers it to Impulse, figuring that Impulse must be thirsty after traveling through the future, or from the future, traveling from the future to this time. And Impulse does drink the water, but then he also figures Nightwing probably wanted to get some DNA samples to prove Impulse's claims, and Impulse is more than happy to offer some spit in the cup to prove his claims are truthful. He also ends up revealing Robin, Nightwing, and Beast Boy's true identities, and using that as proof that he's from the future. Although he also admits he has to remember that secret identities are still a thing in this time period. And we then hear Mal Duncan has entered the cave. Impulse sees this as a chance to escape, and he vibrates fast enough where he removes the handcuffs from both his hands and his feet, and he escapes. And Beast Boy changes into the fastest bird on Earth to chase after him, but Nightwing and Robin both figure out that it'll be a vain effort. But they don't have to worry because Nightwing did find a way to track Impulse, and the tracker was within the water that he drank, so they don't have to worry about the tracker falling off at him at his high speed, the way he's running. And he sees that Impulse is heading for Central City, so he makes a phone call to tell someone about this. We then cut to Central City, where we see Barry Allen and his wife Iris are surprised the Garricks with to celebrate their 70th anniversary together. Then Barry receives a phone call about Impulse's arrival, and not too long after, Impulse does arrive, and he reveals himself to be Barry's grandson. And he's greeting, he also greets his grandmother and his honorary great-grandparents, as he describes the Garricks. And Barry, though, still has a hard time believing his claims, saying that they don't even have kids at this point in time, only for Iris to reveal to Barry that she just found out this morning that she's pregnant, and Impulse lets slip that she's carrying twins. And Kid Flash soon arrives because Nightwing called him about the situation with Impulse and figures that Kid Flash could help out with this situation. But then Iris receives a phone call, and despite Impulse trying to persuade her not to answer the call, she does answer the call. And her boss is telling her about a new supervillain has arrived somewhere in Central City and wants to challenge Flash to a battle. So Barry enters his Flash costume, and he makes a pun about how he'll be back in a flash, which everyone else tells Impulse, yes, he says that a lot. So Flash goes off to confront this new supervillain. He's a bald man, and he's wearing some kind of suit, and it also has a helmet that you can see through. But we, the audience, soon see that this villain is under the control of some shadowy figures. These are members of the Light's newest partner, but like I said, they're shadowy figures. We don't have a clear look on what they look like. And they're speaking in an alien language, so we have to have subtitles to see what they're saying exactly. But they refer to this villain as Neutron, and they're commenting about, they use words that Impulse used as future slang, such as crash and mode. And anyway, back with Neutron. So his ability is he can release rings of energy. That's essentially the best way I can think of to describe his abilities. Flash attempts to battle him, but he's almost hit by one of these energy rings, but he's saved by Impulse, Impulse creates a wind funnel, And Flash compliments this ability, and Impulse reveals that he and his dad, for that matter, would learn it from Flash at some point in the future. But thanks to their speed, they don't. Now that Flash is aware of the ability, he's able to not have to worry about being hit. He can react fast enough to not be hit. But he also comments that he and Impulse are at a stalemate with Neutron. No one can really hit each other. And soon enough, though, Kid Flash joins the battle, and he actually is back in his costume. And when Kid Flash meets up with Impulse and Flash, who also meet up with the local law enforcement to discuss what they need to do, Impulse lets slip that he already knows Neutron's name, but he covers it up by claiming he overheard Neutron proclaiming his name in a way that villains would usually monologue. But then they're trying to figure out a plan, and Flash was actually inspired by the wind funnel technique that Impulse used, thinking that if the three speedsters present work together to create a giant wind funnel, they might be able to stop Neutron. And so they do set that plan into motion, but while this is happening, the shadowy figures notice that Neutron's energy is being released faster than he can control. So an even larger explosion happens, but thanks to the wind funnel, it doesn't really cause any damage to the overall city of Central City. It just creates a slight crater in the spot that Neutron was standing in. When the speedsters retreat and Kid Flash uses his goggles with infrared vision to see what's up, they find out that Neutron actually regenerated, so he's been fully restored, but he's still releasing energy. But what they realize is that, or Kid Flash pieces together that the suit he was wearing was actually meant to control the release of his energy, and now that it's been destroyed, there's no way for them to, or he has no way to control his own energy release. And Neutron also has a different personality now. He's acting confused, and he doesn't know what's going on or what's happening to him. But when Flash requests to use the goggles himself, his vision, which is, he has better vision than Kid Flash, he recognizes that there's I guess you could call them breaks in between when the energy is being released. So Flash figures at his top speed, he could probably get to Neutron during one of those breaks in energy release and bring him to the desert to try and minimize the damage that might happen if he unleashes another larger explosion like what happened during the wind funnel technique. So as Flash tries to reach Neutron, Impulse ends up following him and seems to accidentally trip him, and fortunately for the two of them, though, they're saved by not just Kid Flash, but Jay Garrick, the first Flash, who's back in his costume. And they bring them out of the area as Neutron gives, or as another energy release is happening from Neutron, but it's a very large explosion. Kid Flash criticizes Impulse for almost getting Flash killed because of tripping him up, but Flash actually admits that Impulse inadvertently saved his life, saying that he realizes now, even at his top speed, he wouldn't have been able to make it to the desert in time. After this large explosion, though, Impulse ends up rushing to where Neutron is, and it's at the part where Neutron is in his regeneration phase, and Impulse drops what looks like a blue pill next to Neutron. It absorbs, it starts to have an effect on Neutron. It actually turns him back to normal. He no longer has his powers now. And the rest of the speedsters arrive, and Neutron still has no idea what's happening or how he ended up in the position that he's in. And when the other speedsters question what happened, Impulse claims he doesn't know how Neutron returned to normal. As for Red Arrow and Cheshire, we do see they eventually stopped all of the guards in the building that they were in, and they do come across a chamber. And when they open up a container, the original Roy Harper, Speedy, is within. So Red Arrow and Cheshire have managed to successfully find Speedy. And Leanne makes a comment about her dadas, recognizing the two Roy Harpers. So we're back at Mount Justice now, and they did find out from the DNA sample that Nightwing had acquired from Impulse. They find out that Impulse is telling the truth. He really is the grandson of Barry Allen, as he said he was, and he's from the future, as he said he was. So he's about to go into his time machine to leave, but he says his goodbyes to his grandfather, and then he goes into the time machine, but it doesn't seem to be working, and Impulse complains that he's stuck in the past now that the wires have short-circuited in the time machine, so he has no way to return to his own time. But then we cut back to the opening scene of the episode, and we now have a timestamp for it. It's Mount Justice after all, but it's 40 years in the future. The man that was talking to Impulse was actually Neutron, older and back in control. Or he's wearing a prison outfit, he has an inhibitor collar, and he has scars on his face, but he's clearly regretful about what happened during the past. And it turns out that Flash would have perished if not for Impulse's arrival. Future Neutron was also the one who gave Impulse the blue pill to heal his past self. And we find out that Impulse was aware of the fact that his trip to the past was a one-way trip. And he talks about how he needs to get into character, and then he enters the time machine. And as the time machine disappears, future Neutron's scars disappear, the inhibitor collar around his neck disappears, and his prison clothes change into different clothes. He's happy to see that changes have been made in the past, but he notices that Mount Justice is still destroyed, and that's how we end the episode. Now, this episode, you could say, was a tribute to the different generations of speedsters in DC Comics, because we get the first Flash, Jay Garrick, the second Flash, Barry Allen, Kid Flash, Wally West, and Impulse, Bart Allen. And it was pretty cool that they were able to pay tribute to all the speedsters, or at least some of the most iconic speedsters of DC's history. And as for Impulse, you do have to give his voice artist a lot of credit for being able to talk really fast. And we're talking even at normal speed, not the joke they did where Flash and Impulse are speaking in such a fast-paced manner that Kid Flash can only get every fifth word in. But yeah, his voice artist deserves a lot of credit for his performance as Impulse. And I have to admit, I was surprised to find out that Impulse had no way to return to his own time period. And I imagine that's gonna be awkward probably when there's two Impulses at the same time. Although, then again, time travel is something where there's no set rules. There's no set rules for time travel. It differs depending on which story you're seeing or reading or playing. In the case of a video game, time travel has no set rules. It depends on the story. So I guess maybe there won't be any problems in temporal paradoxes when there's two Bart Allens at the same time. But it did surprise me the first time, I will admit that. We do get a few more hints about the Light's partner. Like, there's more than one individual who's the Light's new partner. And they're speaking an alien language, but the subtitles do reveal that some of the future slaying with Impulse, which was pretty cool. Now, as for that ending regarding the regarding Mount Justice still being destroyed even with the other changes. Yeah, that did confuse a lot of people, but there was apparently a subtle change that only a few people caught on initially. I admit I didn't catch this originally when I first watched the episode, but apparently there was a difference in the sky. The sky looks a little different in the future time after Impulse traveled back in time. So, but it must have been really subtle because I didn't catch that originally, and I had to really pay attention when I rewatched the episode to make sure that the change was there. And so I do have to give a lot of credit to those who managed to catch that difference in the sky early on, or the first time they watched the episode. That was definitely, yeah, I would say that was no easy feat. So good job to those who caught that little detail. It was very subtle. And besides the different generations of Flash, or speedsters, I should say, we do also have another difference in this particular... Or yeah, there's another big event is dealt with in this episode. Red Arrow, with Cheshire's help, does manage to find Speedy. So Speedy has been found after all this time. Although it won't be until a later episode, not too long in the future, but a later episode all the same, where we do catch up with what's going to happen with Speedy now that he's free. And yeah, I do remember it was pretty surprising that Cheshire decided to bring her and Red Arrow's daughter with them on this mission. I remember a lot of people actually agreed with Red Arrow. They wished that Artemis got to look over her niece because people wanted to see Aunt Artemis. And I admit that would have been a fun scene to see how Artemis reacted to being an aunt. But yeah, I guess that fits Cheshire's character all the same, that she would bring her and Red Arrow's daughter along. And Red Arrow admits he thinks he should be concerned that his daughter apparently was reacting gleefully to the fighting that was going on during the episode. But you see, Red Arrow is making progress. Like, seeing that he is a father, that was kind of what he needed to kind of get his act together. And we see he has gotten his act together. So it's good to see that Red Arrow has been making some progress too, even if it wasn't the main focus of the episode. So otherwise, that's about the big highlights for this episode. Like I said, it was cool to see different generations of speedsters all together. And yeah, the surprise that Impulse isn't going to be able to return to the future definitely was something that caught me by surprise originally. And I'm definitely... yeah, Red Arrow finding Speedy with the help of his wife was also nice. So that gives us some more plot lines to look forward to in future episodes of Season 2. So, with that said, we've now discussed episode 32 of Young Justice on this channel. Take care, and until next time.